For me, please.
Rob Kraus,
Here.
Norman Anderson,
Here.
George Crawford,
Here.
Alan Klein,
Here.
W. Gerald Harris,
Here.
Bill Quisenberry, Ryan Glenn, Stuart Nestor,
Here.
Dan Lancaster,
Here.
Mark Thompson,
Here.
Richard West.
Okay, I would like to announce that I spoke with Brian Mullen this morning. He is en route, got tied up in traffic, so he may arrive before we leave or before we adjourn, depending on how long the meeting goes. So if he shows up, I'll just announce it when he shows up. So with that, it looks like we have a quorum, so I'm going to go ahead and move over to approval of the minutes. Item C on the agenda. Has everybody had a chance to review the minutes? Not, I'll entertain a motion.
Record Gerald Harris, I move that the minutes be accepted as written.
Stuart Nestor, I second the motion.
So we have a motion and a second. Discussion, any discussions? Hearing none, I'll call for a vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Not voting? Motion passes. So next, we'll move to item D, public comment. Is there anybody that would like to make a public comment? Not hearing any, we'll go ahead and move on to item E, staff reports. Nick, if you would do
Yes, sir.
executive, please, sir.
Mr. Chairman, board members, Nick Voinis, TDLR, and here to give you our executive office report, kind of a summary of what's been going on and what's going on around the agency. First, I want to thank you all for being here and for your service to the state. As Rob mentioned before, I wanted to formally introduce Christine Reif, who's one of our newest staff members here, and will be your primary contact for this board. Tamala Fletcher and Delia Luna are still here, but will be primary contacts on other boards. So we're glad that Christine is here. 28 years of state experience, came over to us in September from the podiatry board. Glad to have her. On a very sad note, our agency recently lost one of its leaders as George Ferry passed away peacefully late last month on October 31st. George was our longtime compliance director, and he fought a brave fight with cancer. George came to the agency in 1991. He was a great man. He was very important to all of us, and he's already missed, and our thoughts and prayers go out to his family. Would like to, Mr. Chairman, ask for a moment of silence for George Ferry. Thank you. It's been a busy year since state lawmakers have gone home after a very busy 85th legislative session and a special summer session this year. TDLR staff's been busy implementing legislation that passed during that time. All TDLR divisions have been involved in the process, which includes developing rules, communicating to stakeholders, appointing, prepping advisory boards, hiring additional staff, and dealing with education exams, IT programs, and more. To remind you, on May 29th, Governor Abbott signed HB 100, which immediately brought oversight of the state's transportation network companies to TDLR, and on September 1, we picked up the state's podiatrists. On November 1, we added 6 more health-related programs from the Department of State Health Services, phase 2 of the 13 total programs that were granted us in 2 years ago. So we now have code enforcement officers, laser head removal, massage therapy, mold assessors and remediators, offender education programs, and sanitarians on board. Next September, we'll pick up the state's behavior analysts. But I want to mention that as we add programs granted to us by the legislature, lawmakers have also deregulated 5 of our programs since 2003 and will deregulate 4 others in the next 2 years. We recommended that action during our strategic planning process, which we will also go through here this next spring, which included public and industry feedback. The legislature agreed that the licensing requirement for these programs were unnecessary and burdensome, and doing without them posed no or little or no risk to consumer protection. Last meeting, we talked a little bit about TDLR's response plan and actions for Hurricane Harvey relief. Over the last 2 months, TDLR staff's been working hard to help our licensees and small businesses in the Gulf Coast area recover from the devastation of Hurricane Harvey. In coordination with the governor's office and their Rebuild Texas efforts, we've been implementing procedures to assist all eligible licensees in the affected areas to help them recover and return to work as quickly as possible by removing the burden of red tape. Our Harvey focus now is on the rebuild by protecting small business and consumers, avoid unlicensed activity, and ensuring that they receive quality work for their hard-earned dollars. Information on all this and more can be found on our website, tdlr.texas.gov, and on the governor's Rebuild Texas site. In addition to our web presence, wanted to also again remind you of our social media efforts on Facebook and Twitter. Keep up with TDLR activities and events on those social media outlets. But wanted to also give you an update on website traffic for your program. Over the last 10 months, from January 1 till the end of October here last week, the Boiler website had 40,554 page views. That's an average of 134 page views per day. 66% of those still do it from a desktop computer, while 32% did so from a smartphone and 3% from a tablet. The top reasons for visiting the site: number one, laws and rules, followed by applications and forms, exam and CE information, FAQs, and inspection information. Any questions? Be glad to answer them. Otherwise, thank you very much.
Thank you, Nick. With that, I'm going to go ahead and move on to item E2, Compliance Division, personnel updates. Keith?
Good morning, Board and staff and guests. For personnel updates, Ricky Bryan, the team leader for the Dallas area, is retiring effective 12/31 of this year. We posted his position, and we have a boiler inspector, Deanna Denard, from our Houston area, has applied for that position. Was interviewed, was offered the job, and she accepted it. And her start date will be 12/1 of this year. We had Don Jones, the boiler inspector for the Dallas area, retired in the end of October, and his position, as well as her position, is now going to be vacated. We're currently in interviews. We hope to have those on board, or at least accepted by the 1st of December also. So that's for the personnel updates. For training and public outreach, Rob Trout, the chief inspector, has attended the MBIC meeting the week of July 17th of this year. The MBIC Board of Trustees members meeting and chiefs meeting the week of 10/2/17, and he was requested by the state of Louisiana to give training at their Louisiana AIA's meeting the week of 10/16/17, and he attended ASME Code Week for 10/30/17. Other outreach things we're doing: we've reached out to all of the boiler owners that are available for extensions to see if Hurricane Harvey has impacted them, and we're working with that.
Thank you. That'll bring us to the inspection statistics. Karen, can you do that for me, please?
Good morning. For the record, my name is Karen Berryman, a program specialist with the Boiler Program. I'm going to go over the inspection statistics document with you. But again, rather than just going over the numbers in the chart, I'd like to maybe look at some monthly averages. The total inspections conducted has been an average of 24 per month that's down from 26 the last time we met. Total extensions processed, average 159 per month. Variances processed, an average of 3.7 per month. And both of those are also down slightly from the last time we looked at the numbers. Restampings processed, those average 1.4 per month, and boiler installation reports processed, an average of 151 per month, which is up a little bit from last time, and temporary boiler operating permits is an average of about 49 per month right now, which is up from 43 last time. The total number of boilers inspected, that average is 2,652 per month, which is down a little bit from the last time. That gives TDLR an average of 704 per month, and the authorized inspection agencies an average of just under 2,000 per month. With regard to the active boilers, again, with this just being a snapshot in time, I wanted to talk about a few percentages. Regarding total active boilers, TDLR is responsible for inspection of approximately 25.5% of the current total active boilers, and the authorized inspection agencies have 74.5%. This is fairly steady over time, as are the next few numbers that I'll go over. Regarding total overdue boilers, TDLR is responsible for 9.4% of the total, and the AIAs have responsibility for 90.6%. This is up, actually, although the overall has been fairly consistent, it's up a little bit for TDLR this go-around. With regard to the active boilers pending responsibility change, almost 7% of the 829 are overdue. If these are not picked up by another authorized inspection agency, these will come under TDL responsibility already overdue. The number of overdue boilers has risen since the last board meeting, but we are continuing to work on this issue. And we think some of these changes, including the number of overdues, are probably due at least in part to Hurricane Harvey. This last column of numbers that we're looking at is for basically the months of highest impact, September and October of this year. And so there were boiler inspections which couldn't be performed timely due to either the boiler or the inspector for that boiler being in an impacted area and not being able to get to them, or the boiler being underwater. Late fees have been waived for boilers in the impacted counties for which the boiler inspection took place on or after 8/23/17, which is when the governor's disaster proclamation went out initially. And again, for those that were not already past due as of that date. And as of last week, we had 535 boilers which had had late fees waived because they met that criteria. The other thing that we want to make you aware of is that the entry of Hartford steam boiler inspection reports and insurance changes were assigned to the program staff from licensing staff effective September 1st of this year. And since that date, we have received approximately 2,000 inspection reports, and we are working to clear up discrepancies between TDLR's and HSB's list of overdue boilers, and we believe once we get all of this resolved, that the number of overdue boilers will actually be greatly reduced. That's it, unless you have any questions for me.
Thank you, Karen. So next on our agenda is item D, which is an update on the major changes from the 2017 edition of ASME or MBIC. Deanna, can you do that for me, please?
Good morning. My name is Deanna. I'm here today to give you a broad overview of the 2017 changes to ASME and the MBIC code changes that will affect the inspection of the TDLR boiler program. Section 1 had one change involving economizers that can be isolated. The change allows safety valves overpressure of 10% or 3 psi, whichever is greater, versus the 6% in 2015. Section 4 created a new mandatory Appendix 10 addressing the rules of fabrication of economizers. Second change, the required high temperature limit control settings. Third change was to the modular hot water heating and steam heating boilers. The 400,000 BTU minimum was deleted. There were 2 code cases drafted by our own chief boiler inspector that were ASME board approved. Code case 2893 and 2882 gives guidance for modular hot water supply and potable water heaters to be certified as a singular boiler. For the 2017 NBIC major changes, we had new supplements added. For Part 1, Supplement 6 addresses installation to condensing boilers. Supplement 13, guidance for the inspection of biomass boilers, fired boilers. Supplement 8 provided technical information related to the welding repair for creep strength enhanced ferritic steel. Also, we have a new addition to the NBIC, Part 4, which will deal with the pressure relief devices. They have consolidated Part 1, 2, and 3 of the pressure relief devices, installation, inspection, and repair requirements. Is there any questions?
Thank you, Deanna.
Thank you.
Oh, that'll move us up to education and examination.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and board members. My name is Jerry Gonzalez, and I'm with the Education and Examination Division. And my report's fairly short. We really didn't have a lot going on with your program. As you can see by the last 2 fiscal year statistics, got the percentages for the exams that have been administered or taken. And as far as fiscal year 2018 for the September and October, we have no one so far that's taken the examinations. Other than that, just busy with the new programs that came in and a lot of other things going on. If you have any questions for me that I can answer or try to answer, be happy to.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
That brings us up to item 4, enforcement. John?
Good afternoon. My name is John Medlock. I'm a prosecutor with the Enforcement Division. My report, too, is light, but that's probably a good thing because that means we haven't had any enforcement activity since the last meeting in September, which is usually good news for people. But if you look at, we provided statistics for the last 2 fiscal years. If you can see, there's actually been kind of a remarkable notice of an increase in the number of cases that have been filed. That's kind of been due to, I think, the fact that we've really been Rob's staff has been fully staffed for a while, and they've really hammering on these overdue boilers and these late fee cases. But it's not just that; it's also cases that involve, inspector malfeasance or, owner operators who are running boilers who were red tagged and didn't have their proper repair requirements, and our inspectors have caught them doing such. But as you can see, the cases have started to generate more and more, and I think it's just going to kind of be a slow trend tick upwards. Maybe not, to the point where other cases are, but at the same time, it'll kind of slowly be a rise upward. So, but if you guys have any questions, I'll be happy to answer any of them.
No? Thank you, John.
Thanks.
And licensing, Tarsha.
Good morning. I am Tarsha Red with the Licensing Division, and As you can see with the report in front of you, there has been a slight increase in the number of inspections that are licensed. The renewals for the inspectors were mailed out last Tuesday. Some AIAs have notified me that they've received them, others they haven't yet, but they should within the next day or two. And the equipment, there's been a slight decrease in the amount of registered equipment, but of course that's a fluid number and it changes from moment to moment. There's for new inspections, through October 31st, there were 2,600, a little over 2,600 new inspections conducted, and the subsequent inspections about 19,000 from between February and October of 2017. Any questions?
Thank
All
you,
right,
Tarsha.
thank you.
Okay, so that's going to bring us to item F on the agenda, which is a report on the, from the task group on the late fees. Mr. Ponce?
Good morning. Luis Ponce, Boiler Program Inspection Specialist. The Late Fees Task Group met on October 27th, 2017 at approximately 9:30 a.m. by conference call. All task group members were present, including the chair, Mr. Brian Mellon, from Boiler and Property Consulting LLC, Mr. Alan Kripe, Valet Cleaners and Laundry, Mr. Andrew Schrubar, Lower Colorado River Authority, Mr. John Medlock, TDLR Enforcement Prosecutor, Secretary Ms. Karen Berryman, TDLR Program Specialist, and myself, Luis Ponce, Program Specialist, Inspection Specialist. So because the statute does not allow for the waiving of late fees, it was decided to terminate the task group for the scope that it was created. However, a topic of discussion during the meeting was to possibly add a layup status for boilers to be inactive for weeks or even months. This would allow boiler owners and operators to place a boiler in an inactive status while the boiler is down without having to disconnect it. If there is enough interest, perhaps a new task force for laying up boilers may be considered. And that's pretty much, it was a short-lived task group. You know, the statute kind of really tied our hands on that one, but we think that the layup may provide some relief. And that's pretty much all I have. If anybody has any questions. If not,
Okay.
thank you.
So, hold on a second, Luis. So the task group, the outcome of the task group is that statute prohibits us from granting or waiving the late fee.
That's correct.
Through rules, because we can't do something that is against the statute. So with that, I will go ahead and dissolve the task group. But with the questions that the task group brought up, or Mr. Screwbar, from what I understand, was one of the ones asking about that, that brings up the question of how to lay up a boiler, or giving provisions in the rules for a boiler to be put in an inactive status with without a current or be able to put it in an inactive status with them not operating, and if they don't need it, instead of going in and completely disconnecting the boiler. So the way it's written, the rules are written right now, the only way a boiler can be taken out of active status or placed in an inactive status is if we disconnect it in place, which requires electricity, water in, steam or water out, and power to be disconnected completely from the boiler. In other words, a complete disconnect. And for power boilers, that can be quite costly if someone doesn't choose to use that boiler. What I would like to do, if the board agrees, is create another task group to come up with possible rules to, well, actually, it would be creating a definition of a layup and create rules for how to do this and actually make that boiler inactive while they're not using it. The only thing we got to keep in mind is that before that boiler can go back into an active status, it would require a internal inspection. So if it's a wet layup or a dry layup, that's different things that we have to consider. What do you guys
Mr. Chairman,
think?
if I may, I believe the discussion is gone beyond the staff report for the task force. If there's to be a discussion on the merits of a additional task force, I think the process should be to appoint another board without a discussion of the merits back one way or the other.
I guess I'm lost.
The point is, I think the discussion has gone beyond the initial staff report on the task force into the merits of a additional task force. And I think the proper process would be to appoint that task force, let them come back with a report on the pros and cons of the proposition.
That's where I was going. I was wanting to start up a new task group.
Yes, sir, but you were kind of going into the discussion about the merits of it.
Okay. Okay. So, to start up a task group, I need some volunteers for people that would like to be involved in that. Gerald Harris? Andrew Screwbar? One more board member wouldn't hurt. That would work.
Okay.
So, Mr. Lancaster, I'd like to have some TDLR staff on it. I think I'm going to go with Keith and Deanna. Deanna needs some experience with dealing with that. And then I'm going to ask Ms. Berryman to schedule everything and help out with that. Okay? So let's go ahead and move on to item G. Thank you, Luis.
Mr. Chairman, board members, for the record, Charles Johnson, Assistant General Counsel. Item G was on your last.
Mr. Mullen just showed up. Thank you.
Item G was on your last agenda. There was a discussion about the implementation of House Bill 3257. You recommended that the department publish those rules, which in fact we did. The rules were published on September 22nd of 2017, and public comment period closed November 6, 2017. I'm going to assume that you're familiar with the changes that were proposed in that rule. They're in the package, in your packets, and I think copies are available for those interested in those changes. In essence, the bulk of that bill implemented intervals for the inspection of boilers, and we received no comment in response to the publication. And so I believe there's been an internal discussion within the department about a proposed change to one of the sections. I believe Mr. Trout will walk you through that. And the purpose of that change is to line up the rule with the statute.
Thank you, Charles. So if we could turn in the agenda or the meeting material to item 6512. 6512, item 2. So if everybody's there. Basically, what we put in, it's the 5th page in to the rule changes. So item 2, the previous version said have qualified for a current certificate of operation, and the information that was added was with a current certificate of operation displayed at or near the boiler or readily accessible to the inspector. We were going through and dotting our I's and crossing our T's and realized we made a mistake. So I've also provided a blurb out of Texas Boiler Law, Chapter 755.029, paragraph C is what I've got highlighted there for you. You'll see that it says a certificate of operation must be posted under glass in a conspicuous place on or near the boiler for which it is issued. What I'm going to propose is that we amend this to say, have qualified for a certificate of operation with the current certificate of operation posted under glass in a conspicuous place on or near the boiler for which it is issued. So basically, we're just taking the verbiage straight from the law and adding it into the rules to say where it has to be posted. Excuse me. Now, I would recommend that change. No. Was there anything else, Charles?
No, sir. There were no other comments, other concerns. I believe that the change that Mr. Trout is, the chairman has proposed, lines up the rule with the statute, and I believe that because of that change, while it appears to be more onerous than the rule is published, I think that the rule is consistent with the statute, and I would recommend that the board would adopt that change.
So with that, I'll entertain a motion to adopt the change.
Stuart Nestor, I'll make a motion to adopt the change as stated.
Thank you, Shannon.
Brown, and I second them to
Thank you,
make
Brian.
the change.
Any discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Not voting? So I think that leaves us to one more action.
Actually, Mr. Trout, I think we need a vote on whether to recommend to the commission to adopt the rule with the change as adopted by this board.
That was going to be the next thing. So the next step in the rule review is to recommend that the proposed rules go to the commission for adoption and to become finalized as administrative rules in Texas boiler law. So at this point, I'll entertain a motion to adopt the rules as proposed.
the
Or send
record-
them to the commission, I'm sorry.
For the record, Gerald Harris, I so move.
Stuart Nestor, I'll second.
Thank you. So it's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for a vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Not voting? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Well, that brings us to to item H, recommendations for agenda items at our next meeting. I'm going to add in that we get a report from our newly formed task group for laying up a boiler. To add that, anybody have anything else? No? Okay, how about a discussion for a date and time for the next meeting?
Presiding Officer, Mary Winston, TLR. We discussed, actually Nick and Charles were on the sidelines discussing that you don't have any pressing business right now. We do have the work group that needs to discuss the new findings, but as TDLR heads into strategic planning, it may be a good idea to hold off for that meeting until after strategic planning has begun, or we have some sort of feedback from the strategic planning. The other meetings that we've held have now scheduled in April. We're moving down April to May. We have dates April 24th, May 1st, and May 8th, if any of those would be good for you.
I can tell you the week of May is ASME Code Week, so that would probably not be good.
Is that the first?
Yeah. Anybody have anything in April?
I'm open on April 24th. That's the date.
Yeah, I could do April 24th.
Okay. Would you guys like to have a morning or afternoon meeting? Morning? Can we do April 24th at 9 a.m.? Okay. Sounds like Ladies and gentlemen, that brings us to item J, adjournment. As we are adjourned.
One question, or may I add a recommendation to add a chair to the?
Rob,
I'm sorry, the meeting's been adjourned.
yeah, we can't do that. It's adjourned. It's adjourned.
Never mind.
Gavel us out.